The Vivo X23 is a mid-range flagship smartphone from the company BBK Electronics, who also own Oppo and OnePlus phones. The X23 is Vivo's fourth attempt to perfect the in-display fingerprint sensor, which was first seen at the end of 2017 with their Vivo X20 UD. Since then, Vivo have released a follow-up device known as the X21 UD and the highly praised Vivo Nex S. The X23 is a nice toss-up between the X21 and the Nex. It uses the latest mid-range Snapdragon 670 chipset, which is an improvement over the 660 found in the X21, but falls short of the 845 chip seen in Vivo's flagship phone, the Nex. It has adopted the cameras from the Nex and slightly improved the clarity too. Not to mention, it tried to minimize the bezels almost as much as the Nex, but retains the notch. However, this time round it uses a teardrop design approach, which is certainly more subtle and safer due to the absence of a pop-up mechanism as seen in recent flagships from Vivo and Oppo. So what does this mean for the X23? It is a mid-range phone with a lot going for it, but not quite sure where it stands. Let's try find its purpose in my full review. The X23 feels solid and premium in hand with its rear glass panel. It feels as solid as the Nex and more so than its predecessor. Taking a closer look at the device, we find the clicky power button and volume rocker on the right side of the aluminium frame, a 3.5mm headphone jack at the top, a rough feeling AI button on the left, and the dual SIM tray micro USB port and single firing speaker at the bottom. Looking at the front of the device, we are treated to a 6.41-inch display with the smallest teardrop notch I have ever seen, which houses the selfie cam at the top and physical earpiece just above that. Underneath the display there is still a chin, but it is even smaller than the one found on the Nex. At the back of the phone we have a beautiful shifting color scheme. The one I have here is the Phantom Purple variant. We have a prominent Vivo logo and cutouts for the dual camera setup and flash. As with previous Vivo offerings, this phone is all about the screen. This is a 6.41-inch AMOLED display with Full HD Plus resolution that looks sharp and crisp due to having 402 pixels per inch. Thanks to the tiny teardrop notch, the screen-to-body ratio sits at 91.2%, just 0.04% more than that of the Nex. The screen also holds up well indoors and outdoors with its overbright display. The first thing you will see before unlocking the phone is Vivo's brilliant always-on display. It is bright and visible and comes with plenty options to personalize as you please. Unlocking the phone can be done in two satisfying ways, the first being the fingerprint sensor, which is found under the display. As I mentioned earlier, this is Vivo's fourth iteration of this, and this time around they have nailed it. It is easy to set up and has some fancy animations to go with it, but most importantly, it is fast and accurate. It has yet to fail me and even feels faster than the physical sensor found on my Galaxy Note 9. That alone is a huge step in the right direction for all smartphone companies. After Vivo's latest version, we are sure to see more in-display sensors being adopted by flagship phones in the near future. Comparing it to the speed of the X21, you can instantly see the difference. The second way you can unlock this phone is by using Face Unlock. It takes a second to set up and is unbelievably quick to use. This is not as secure as a true 3D face unlocker and therefore cannot be used for other security needs, but it does a superb job at unlocking your phone on the fly. Vivo have now also included an option to combine fingerprints and face unlock, much like Samsung have done with Intelligence Scan, which allows for medium security and speed. This makes using the fingerprint sensor even faster. The lock screen is clean, and once unlocked you are welcome to Vivo's FunTouch Android skin. As mentioned in my previous videos, I am a huge fan of the FunTouch experience, and their latest 4.5 version built on Android Oreo is their best to date. There is no option for an app drawer, but the home screen is clutter-free and simple to use. Not only can you swipe from page to page with crazy slide effects, but you can also use a page bar found right above the app dock to move between pages more quickly. You can customize widgets the way you would usually, but strangely you cannot pinch to get there. You have to hold down on a blank part of the screen. Creating folders is easy and moving apps between pages is seamless due to having access to all of your pages when editing the layout of your home screen right below each page. Unfortunately, you're stuck with 4x6 apps per home page, and there is no way of changing this, although being allowed to have 5 apps in the dock makes this a little more bearable. Vivo have also kept their much loved control center, which allows you to swipe up from left of any screen to get to shortcuts, adjust the volume, change the brightness, and view open apps, as well as close each app or all apps. This is a lot more convenient when needing to switch between apps on the fly. You can also lock apps so that certain apps don't close when you decide to close all open apps. There is another way to view apps more traditionally. This is done by using the included full screen gestures. This allows you to swipe up from the bottom right of the screen to go back, from the middle to go home, and from the left to open the control center to view recent apps. You can also swipe up and hold from the center to view open applications more commonly should you prefer. The navigation gestures also come with a fair share of customizing, including the way the navigation bar looks, or simply hide it altogether, making for a cleaner look. There are a few features worth speaking of which set FunTouch apart from the rest. You can set a task timer for when you would like your phone to be on vibrate mode, use one-handed mode by the use of a gesture and size can be adjusted when in use, close an app should you have more than one account, though this is limited to certain apps, and use split screen multitasking, though this is not practical due to its lack of app support. Smart Click allows you to quick launch any app by holding down the volume down key when the display is off. This is great if you need to quick launch the camera, but a double click would have been better. Vivo have also included something called Smart Motion, which allows you to double tap the screen to wake or sleep, and swiping in different directions with your finger when the screen is off in order to quick launch certain tasks, which works well. But other Smart Motion features such as Raise to Wake and Air Unlock are pointless due to how badly they work. Raise to Wake pretty much never works, and Air Unlock only works when you have no phone security and the lock screen is displayed. It is also worth mentioning that Vivo have an AI assistant called Jovi. She can help with many things such as enhancing photos, recognizing images, and using voice. However, the latter is only useful for native Chinese speakers. Using Jovi can enable what Vivo call Smart Scene to add useful cards, shortcuts, and frequently used apps to the left of your home screen. More importantly, you can enable Easy Scan, which allows you to hold down on any on-screen text, whether it is selectable or not, to provide useful information or to simply select or translate text. This is great, but I find it easier to use the dedicated AI button to recognize the text for an easier experience, and even translate the entire page. This is seriously useful when living or traveling in a foreign country. Note that you cannot customize this button to do anything else, such as Google Assistant or quick launch an app. Smart Click is there for that. The latest that Jovi can do is aid your battery. The 3330 mAh lithium-ion battery is a bump up from Vivo's latest mid-ranger and now lasts even longer than expected thanks to Jovi deciding which apps you use most and which apps you use least. She then automatically puts apps you rarely use to sleep in order to preserve battery life. Should you need to refuel during the course of your day, there is a massive 22.5 watt power block in the box. And though there is no USB Type-C, there is fast charging which will refill your phone from 0 to 100 in under an hour and a half. Unfortunately, there is no wireless charging, but I'm okay with that since this is a mid-range phone. This extra juice in the tank is great, but what is it powering? Well, for starters, the X23 packs in 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, but bear in mind that this is the only variant there is. There are no bigger storage options and there is no microSD card support. If you use less than 128 gigs of storage like me, then this shouldn't be a problem, but if you like having a ton of storage on the go, then you may need to look elsewhere. The battery is also powering the latest Snapdragon mid-range chip known as the 670. This won't come close to benchmark scores of Snapdragon's flagship 845 chip, but this is on par with the 710 chip seen in the Nex-A and just beats the Oppo R17, which uses the same 670. Outside of benchmarks, the phone is snappy. Whether you are scrolling through home screen pages or jumping between everyday apps, you will notice no delay whatsoever. Gaming is great too. I have noticed no lag or jitters when playing any of my favorite graphic intensive games, and though the phone does not include water cooling, it barely gets hot and never overheats. When gaming, watching a movie or listening to music, you'll be pleased to know that the single firing speaker holds its own quite well. There is no stereo sound here, but it gets as loud as I would like and has some good highs, mids and lows.
Mr. Doctor. Mr. Doctor, it's strange. Maybe. Who am I to judge?
There is always the option of a wireless speaker or headphones thanks to Bluetooth 5, or you could just simply use the included earphones with the dedicated headphone jack. Plugging in a good set of cans into the headphone jack makes for a noteworthy experience thanks to Vivo's V1 Hi-Fi DAC. Moving on to the improved dual camera setup, you'll be thrilled by the specs on paper. The primary lens is a 12 megapixel shooter with an aperture of f1.8, which allows in decent light. The secondary lens is a 13 megapixel wide angle sensor which allows you to take wide angle shots, much like the ones found on the latest from LG. It also allows for the use of the depth effect in portrait pictures. Unfortunately, there is no OIS or EIS, which may be a deal breaker for some, but Vivo's AI cameras seem to handle small shakes quite well. The camera user interface is clean and includes all the camera options you could want in a camera phone. In daylight, the pictures are very similar to that of the Vivo Nex, since the primary lens is the same besides for the lack of OIS. Photos come out clear and crisp in almost all situations, and autofocus works well. However, some photos come out a little too sharp for my liking, though this can be adjusted in the included professional mode. Taking wide angle photos is great and doesn't lose any detail. I feel that all smartphones should include a wide angle lens, as it makes life a lot easier when wanting to get a lot into one scene without having to back up. Using the secondary lens for portrait pictures is great and does a superb job without losing any detail in the subject and allowing the blur to look natural. Low light pictures come out great just like they do on the Nex. However, you do lose some detail due to the AI trying to brighten things up. Comparing it to the king of low light shots, Samsung clearly retains more detail, but the Vivo seems to be brighter. The same can be said for taking pictures at night. They do come out brighter than I can see with my eyes, but the detail is just not there compared to flagships. Moving on to video, Vivo have included 4K and 1080p recording. However, both are limited to just 30 FPS. Without OIS and 60 FPS 4K video recording is very shaky, though it still looks brilliant. You would expect 1080p recording to be the same. However, this is not the case. The video comes out very smooth and stabilized, even without built-in stabilization features. Once again, it looks amazing. You can also shoot a wide-angle video, though this is limited to 1080p. There is also an option for slow motion at 240 frames per second. It makes for some great slow moments, but is limited to just 720p. Flicking over to the front, you will find the 12 megapixel f2.0 aperture selfie cam neatly tucked away in the teardrop notch. The selfie cam takes some pleasing pictures that are not only crisp, but filled with light, detail and pop. It is also loads of fun to take portrait pics using the front-facing camera due to its interesting variety of options. Strangely, you can record up to 4K using the selfie cam. Both 4K and 1080p are once again limited to 30 FPS, but this is more common for front cameras found in even the most high-end phones. The recording is clear and more stable than I was expecting. The Vivo X23 does sound like it has it all. However, just like many mid-range phones, there are some drawbacks in order to complement the price. As I mentioned earlier, there is no wireless charging and there is no microSD card support. But more importantly, there is no NFC, USB Type-C, or IP certification. I can understand the lack of water resistance due to its price point, but having no NFC or a Type-C port are just some things that shouldn't be left out of any smartphone in 2018. Other than that, the Vivo X23 is an almost perfect mid-range phone. It has an AMOLED display with epic screen-to-body ratio, it has a solid build and looks fantastic, it has an under-display fingerprint sensor which actually works well, a headphone jack, AI with a dedicated button, and a great camera system at the back and front. The X23 cost around $500, which is about the price point for any top-end mid-range phone with this kind of innovation. Besides for its fingerprint sensor, I just cannot justify why anyone would buy this phone over the OnePlus 6. The OnePlus 6 has a flagship Snapdragon 845 chipset in it, takes better photos, and has a few more useful features for the same price. And that is why I will give the X23 a score of 80 out of 100. If it had a stronger chipset in it, or it was $150 cheaper, it would almost be the perfect phone. Until next time guys, this is TechNick.